here's a video about trigonometry. Because basically one of my kids came up to me in school the other day and said, "Hey sir, can you teach me about trigonometry please?" I mean, he didn't really, obviously. He's a made up child because no one's ever said that to me ever. But, you know, Keith, who the made up child that came up to me, wanted to know. So here's a video about it. And obviously, learning objective, we're going to learn about SOH. Now, SOH, this is what I think of as straightforward trigonometry. There is more complicated trig you can do, but this is just straightforward. You've got a right angle triangle and you're trying to find out some sides or some angles and so on. We've got some keywords, obviously. We need to know about SOH, and it's really important you learn these three silly words because they tell you all about kind of how to do the maths. And then we've got three functions, three trig functions: sine, cos, and tan, otherwise known as sine, cosine, and tangent. And you'll find those on your calculator. And then hopefully by this point you've already done some Pythagoras. Now, Pythagoras is to do with right angle triangles as well, but Pythagoras only involves the sides of a right angle triangle. So if you've got just a fairly standard question, we've got two sides, one 18 and one 12, and we need to find the third side. And we can use Pythagoras to find that. And there's no angles involved other than it has to be a right angle triangle. Trigonometry, or SOH, is also about right angle triangles, but this time we're going to involve an angle as well. So here's a fairly standard question. We've got two sides, 18 and 12, but this time, instead of finding the other side, we're trying to find one of the angles. Or, of course, it could be that we've got an angle on one side and we want to find one of the others, and that works as well. So you need to know some stuff. You need to remember, first of all, SOH, really important, those 9 letters and the orders of them. All right? And we've got some triangles here. And we fill out the triangles using the 3 letters of each of the 3 silly words, SOH, CAH, and TOA. And you always start on the bottom left. So for SOH we go, or SOH, CAH, and TOA. For SOH we go S in the bottom left, down there. And then at the top we've got O, and in the bottom right we've got H. But I think actually I don't write them with S. I usually put in the actual function. So I put sine, O, and H. And then our middle triangle over here, wherever my pen's gone, is C, A, and H for CAH, but C isn't really C, it's cos. And then the third one, we've got T, O, and A. They always start in the bottom left and move clockwise round, and T again isn't T, it's really tan. Okay, so there's 3 triangles. If you can remember the 3 silly words, then you can do the 3 triangles. There they are. Okay, right, here's a question then. So this is really a bit more of a review than actually sort of teaching you how to do it, but hopefully it's a bit of a reminder about this. Let's get the pen out. Now, first of all, we've got we've got one side here over there, and we've got the side down here that we don't know. That's the one we want to find, and then we've got an angle that we do know up here. And we're going to do things in a specific order. The first thing you need to do is label the sides. All right, we're going to label the 3 sides. Now, the angle that we're talking about, not the right angle, but the angle that we're using, always looks at the opposite side. So we're going to put O for opposite. And then the right angle always points at the hypotenuse. Yes, so excuse the writing, I haven't used the pad for a while. And then the third side, this one that's kind of next to the angle, but not the hypotenuse, that's the adjacent side, okay? Now, at this point, what I want to do is cross out the one that I don't need. One of these 3 sides we don't need. Now, this one is clearly a side that's got a length on it, so A I need. This one down here is the side I need to know, so I clearly need that. But H actually is sat over here on its own, and I don't need it. So I'm looking at, I've got A and I've got O. Now, the only triangle that's got O and A in it is the tan one, so that's what we're going to use. Right, next step is, am I using sine, cos, or tan? Well, we've done that. What I want to do now is draw the trig triangle. Well, I've got my trig triangle, there we are, tan in the bottom left, O at the top, and then A down here. And do the calculation. Well, to do the calculation, I need to know what to do. So I'm trying to find this side down here. I'm trying to find the opposite side. So if I ignore the opposite side and just look at the rest of the triangle, what it's telling me is I need to do tan times by A. These 2 things next to each other mean times. So tan times by A. So if I want to find X, it's going to be tan, And when we say tan, we really mean tan of the angle times by the adjacent side. So for us, that's going to be tan of, let's put this in, 35 degrees times by A. Writing really has got bad on this, but you get the idea. Okay, so you get your calculator and you type it in, make sure you got a scientific one, press tan, put in 35, and on mine I need to shut the bracket after it as well, and then times it by my adjacent side, which was 7.9, which is 5 point, I'm going to do this to 1 decimal place, so if I round it up, that's 5.5 centimeters, and I did that to 1 dp. Okay. So we labelled the 3 sides, crossed out the one we didn't need, we decided if we were using sine, cos or tan, drew the trig triangle, or rather I already had the trig triangle, and then I did the calculation. Okay. Right, let's try another example. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing again then. So we're going to start off by labelling the 3 sides. Well, my angle is looking at the opposite side, so that's the opposite. My right angle is pointing at the hypotenuse, so that's h, that's the hypotenuse. And the side over here is the adjacent one. Okay, right, cross out the one we don't need. We'll clearly need this one because it's got a length actually on there. We clearly need h because that's the side we're trying to find. The one we don't want is going to be O. Right, then, sine, cos or tan. Look at the 2 letters you've got, A and H. Only one of the silly words has A and H in it, and this time it's CAH. So this is the trig triangle we're after. Right, last bit. Look at the side you're trying to find. I'm trying to find the hypotenuse. Right, there's the hypotenuse. So I ignore that one. I'm going to kind of cross it out for now. And the maths I'm left with is A over cos. So if I want to find x, I need to do the maths of A over cos, and that means divide. Now when we say cos is really nothing on its own, it's a function. I need to put something into it, and the thing I put into it is the angle. So it's cos of that 55 degrees, and my A is 14.8. Okay, now I'll go across to my calculator, I'll put it in, 14.8 divided by cos of, and then make sure you put the angle in, 55. I need to shut my bracket, and to 1 decimal place we have got 25.8 centimeters, and that was to 1 dp. Okay, we labelled the 3 sides, crossed out the one we didn't need, and then decided, using the 2 letters, we decide which of the 3 silly words we're going to use. Look at the side you're trying to find and sort of cross it out, ignore it. You know, if you've drawn it out, you can put your thumb on it. I can't do that on screen. And then the rest of it tells you what math to do. So this was the adjacent side divided by cos of the angle. Right, next, there's 2 for you to have a go at. So do one, and then press pause, and then I'll go through the answer. So press pause. Okay, right, we've unpaused. So the first thing to do is label the 3 sides. So let's label up the sides. The angle looks at the opposite side. The right angle points to the hypotenuse, and this side then must be the adjacent, the one next to it. Cross out the one we don't need. We don't need the hypotenuse because it's not part of this question. It's not active, as I think of it. Then decide on the silly word. Well, we've got O and A. Now the only silly word that has O and A in it is TOA, which means we are using this triangle here. Right, look at the side you're trying to find. We're trying to find A, so it's not A that I want. So I look at my maths and it's the opposite side divided by tan of the angle. So in this case, x is going to equal the opposite side over tan of the angle. Okay, because remember, we know that tan on its own isn't really anything. You have to put something in it to get an answer out. Right, the opposite side is 8. And tan is, of course, tan of the angle, which is 30 degrees. I shall put it into my trusty calculator. 8 divided by tan of 30, and then close the bracket, and I get a third answer first of all with some square roots, but to one decimal place, 13 point, and I've got to round my 8 up to a 9 centimeters. And I think, is that reasonable? Yeah, it looks about reasonable, and that was to 1 dp. Okay, right, if you haven't done the second question, I want you to press pause now, do the second question, and then mark it. So press pause. Okay, right, first things first, label the sides. So this angle is looking at the opposite side. The right angle looks at the hypotenuse. So this one next to the angle must be adjacent. Next, cross out the side we don't need. I clearly need that because it's 8 centimeters. I need this one because I'm trying to find that side. O isn't taking any part in this question at all. Next, decide which silly word to use. Well, I've got A and I've got H, and the only one that has A and H is CAH, which means we are after this trig triangle here, CAH. Next, what side am I trying to find? I'm trying to find the adjacent side. So the adjacent one, cover with your thumb or cross it out. I don't need it. And that tells me the maths. It tells me that if I want to find the length of x for this triangle, I need to do cos, when we mean cos of the angle, times by h, which is cos. Remember, cos can't work on its own. It needs something in it to work, so we put the angle in it. Cos of 50 times by 8. And we go across to the calculator, and we do cos 50, close brackets, times by 8, equals, let's have a look, we've got 5 point and to one decimal place, 5.1 centimeters, and that again is to 1 dp. Does it seem reasonable? Well, if the hypotenuse is 8, this one could be 5.1. It sounds about right. Okay. Right, new skill then. I want you to have a go at doing the 4 of these. There's a new skill. There's a new skill down on these 2 triangles here where we're trying to find the angle. But try the first 2 first. Then we'll do them. We'll check them out, do some working out on them. I will give you a hint. Angles are shifty, which means you're going to need to press shift. If you're finding an angle, you need to use, you'll see on your calculator, if you use shift, you get sine to the -1, cos to the -1, and tan to the -1. And that might be useful for these 2 questions at the bottom. Okay, but have a go at the top 2 first, and then we'll come back after you've paused it. Okay, we're back again. Right, let's change pen colour. Okay, right, label the 3 sides. So we've got 78 is opposite that side. The hypotenuse is this one because the right angle's looking at it. And this must be the adjacent because it's next to the angle but not the hypotenuse. Right, cross out the one you don't need. Well, the one that's not active in this question is O, which leaves me with A and H, which means we're looking at CAH. So my triangle is this one, the cos AH1. And I'm trying to find the hypotenuse here. So it's the hypotenuse I'm trying to find. So I'm just going to cross that out for a second. And which leaves me with A over cos, the adjacent side divided by cos of the angle. So if I want to find x, it's going to be the adjacent side over cos of the angle. And we know that we mean cos of the angle, not just cos on its own, because cos is nothing on its own, it needs something in it to work. So the adjacent side is 4, and it's cos of the angle of 78 degrees. Let's put it in a calculator. 4 divided by cos of 78 equals, to one decimal place, 19.2 centimeters. Which seems quite long, but then the angle is quite steep, so this hypotenuse will be quite long compared to the base. Okay, right, change your pen colour again. Let's go for, I have no idea what pen colour that is, but we'll find out when we... what have we got here then? So let's label up the sides. Right, this angle is looking at the opposite side. Oh, that's a groovy colour. The hypotenuse is this one because the right angle is looking at it, and this is the adjacent because it's next to the angle but not the hypotenuse. Right, H in this case isn't active in the question, it's not taking any part, which means we're looking at O and A. Now O and A means we're talking about TOA, so let's look at the tan triangle. I'm trying to find the opposite side here because that's where X is, so I don't want the opposite, and it tells me that my maths is then tan times by A. That's what the next two here means, tan times by A. So if I want to find X, it's going to be tan, and remember it's tan of the angle, times by the adjacent side. And so we need to put something in tan to make it work, which is 23. We're going to times it by the length of A, which is 16. I really regret using that colour, but never mind. Right, tan of 23, close the bracket, times by 16 equals, to one decimal place, I need to round that up a bit, that's 6.8 centimetres. Okay, and that was again, always worth putting what you've rounded it to, one decimal place. Right, we are going to look at these bottom two questions here. Now there's something slightly different about these, and I would suggest that whilst I'm changing pen colour, you pause this and then have a go at answering these, and if you get really stuck, unpause it and then we'll see what we can do. Okay, let's have a look. Right, label the sides. It's always the same thing to start with. Always label the three sides. And we've got, that is opposite to the angle. The right angle's looking at the hypotenuse, which is where the 12 is, which means the 7 is the adjacent side. Oh, no, come back. There we go. And so the 7 is the adjacent side. Had a bit of trouble there. Never mind. Right, now what are we actually trying to find in this one? We're not trying to find A or H, but you can see that O is not active in the question. What we're trying to find is the angle itself. Now I've got A and H, which means the silly word that's got A and H in it is CA, which is cos. So we're looking at the cos triangle. So I need to just do a little bit of erasing. Get rid of some of that old pink stuff that's up there. And for these ones, when you're trying to find the angle, we're going to need the inverse of the function, inverse of cos in this case, cos to the minus 1. So what we're saying here is, because cos is the thing we're finding, cross it out, we're left with A over H. But what is A over H? It's cos of X. Cos of the angle equals A over H. Now to undo that, to solve it, to find what X is, I need to use cos to the minus 1 of A over H. And you'll find that on your calculator, if you press shift, you should be able to get cos to the minus 1. And so on your calculator, just to clear this up a little bit, what I actually need to put in, if it'll let me use the eraser, let's clear those bits out of there. What I actually need to put into it is cos of A over H. Now A is 7 and H is 12. So it's cos to the minus 1 of, inside the brackets, 7 divided by 12. And if you put that in your calculator, so press shift, press cos, and you get cos to the minus 1. 7 divided by 12. Close the bracket and press equals. And you should get, if it fits on the bottom of the screen here, 54.3 to one decimal place, and that's degrees. So it's slightly different to what we've done before in that we need to use shift and get the inverse of cos. Right? Angles are shifty, I always say. They're slightly trickier and you have to use shift. That's why they're shifty. Right, let's change pen color just for the last question. Let's go back to red. Right, let's try this one then. Or rather, you try this one. Press pause and then unpause it and I'll go through the answer. Here we go. First things first, let's label up. So there's my angle and it's looking at the side with 5 on, so that's O. So the right angle is looking at this side, which is the hypotenuse, which means this side must be the adjacent, the one next to the angle but not the hypotenuse. Now the one that's not active is H, so I'm going to cross that out, which leaves me with O and A, and the only silly word that's got O and A in it is TOA. It's tan. So we need the tan triangle. Right, what side are we trying to find? Well, we're not finding a side. We're finding the angle. Now the angle then, obviously is not O or A. The angle is going to be tan. That's what that represents. So cross it out and I'm left with O divided by A. So my maths is going to be, if I want to find X, I need to do inverse of tan of O over A. Angles are shifty, you have to use shift to get the inverse of tan. Right, so it's inverse of tan, and my O side, my opposite is 5, divided by my adjacent of 10. Sorry about the writing. Right, so press shift, press tan to get tan to the -1, that means I can find my angle. 5 divided by 10, so opposite divided by adjacent, shut the bracket, press equals, and I get to 1 decimal place. It actually needs a little bit of rounding here, 26 point, and I need to round my 5 up to a 6 degrees. And if you got that, well done, because you know it is tricky finding the angle, but a bit of practice makes perfect. Right. Thank you very much, and good luck.